What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares to set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with. We're going to be talking about life before prison, life in prison, and life out of prison. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that will help you knock down some of your prisons you've built up in your own mind. Folks, today I have Mark Ross with me, and Mark and I, of course, were at Leavenworth together. Mark is he's a Big Ten Iowa Hawkeye. Actually, Mark was a D1 athlete who actually played at Iowa and played defensive line. And just to say he was a big man at Leavenworth, he was a big man at Leavenworth. And Mark, I really appreciate you being with me today. Welcome.
Welcome, Brent. Thanks for having me.
So, Mark, we were just sharing with the fact you're actually doing some babysitting for you've got a twin brother that's what, 3 months
right.
or 3 minutes older than you. And I've
Yep,
seen
correct.
I've seen the pictures. You guys are definitely twins. So take me into your world, Mark. So you ended up getting charged in what year?
2010.
2010. And the charge was?
Money laundering and computer fraud.
Okay. So I want to go back into this because you obviously lived a life of an athlete. You were disciplined. You know, you just don't become a D1 athlete. Tell me what your life was like in Iowa. I know you were a small town, but give us some flavor for what it was growing up in your small town, being an athlete, and what was going on back in your day.
Like to explain, you played every sport of what was in season. And fortunately my family grew up kitty corner from the old school that was in Dune. So the ballpark was there and a big field that we played football on. And then of course it had a basketball court. So we were always over at the school, from sun up to sundown during the summer, playing pickup baseball, during the fall into the winter. Didn't matter how cold it was. We were always there playing football, with all our buddies. And I probably grew up, with my twin brother, but we probably had a core group of buddies that was 2 years younger to 2 years older that we'd always get together.
Yeah.
And we actually wore our helmets, our NFL helmets, which aren't recommended today by any means for concussion protocol.
Right.
But we would strap it on and play. I can remember my first concussion that I got. I had a plastic red helmet on that I got for my 6th or 7th birthday, and I wore it over there knowing probably, but I didn't know. You're a kid. You're going to live the life to the edge, and then that's kind of how I lived my life. Growing up in that, I kind of grew up being a tough guy.
Yeah.
So, I worked out in the morning, before school and after school. And I also wrestled, so I had to cut weight. So, I worked out 3 times a day for that in the morning after practice. And then at the evening, we'd probably sit in a sauna or go jump rope in a hawk confinement with our coveralls on.
And what size were you back then, Mark, with your high school days?
I probably played at 280, and I wrestled at the heavyweight weight then was 275.
And you're about 6'4", 6'5"?
Right, yeah. Right. So I had that, aspects of working out. And then in the spring we had track and field. I was not in track. My twin brother was, through the shot and the disc, and I just worked out, lifted and played pickup basketball, and then started throwing early spring because I played baseball and I pitched and played first base. So, we did that, and seeing the weight rooms at high schools today compared to what we had was like an overgrown utility closet.
Right.
We had a hip sled, 3 benches, and 2 squat racks. That was it.
What was life like in the home with mom, dad, your siblings?
So my dad worked for Lyon County, which is the county in Dune, Iowa, the county seats in Rock Rapids, of course. He ran a maintainer and worked heavy equipment all of his life with my grandfather. So he was always, Monday through Friday. When it snowed, he was out plowing snows. And then my mom has been a nurse for over 50 some years, and she worked either overnights or days. So watching my younger brother or sister during the day was something that my twin brother and I did. And that's how we learned how to cook.
Yeah.
And on the weekends, we always went up to Okoboji, Iowa, to our family camper at the resort, had a boat, went on vacations.
Pretty normal life. Good life.
Pretty normal life. Went to church every Sunday like normal kids do, go to Sunday school.
If I remember, Mark, you said your town was about like 850 people.
Yep, 850 people.
Yeah, that's not very big.
So it's small community, but it's growing now.
Yeah.
The house that I grew up is still existing, so we always drive by that. And where my aunt lived, in the town of Dune as well. So I don't, with all the things, I had a great home life, very supportive.
Mm-hmm.
We went to camps during the summer, but we also baled hay, walked beans, detasseled corn, worked at the county fair in the summer, went swimming.
Mm-hmm.
We pretty much, either went to Rock Rapids to the local pool there, or we swam in the river, and we did a lot of fishing. So life was good.
No, life sounds good. So you graduate from high school. You've got your eye on wanting to play football. Walk me through how that all happened for you.
So I went to a small junior college in Esterville, Iowa Lakes Community College, and played football there. And then from there, got a preferred walk-on at the University of Iowa, and had a very eye-opening experience, coming from a small town. And even the junior college I went to wasn't very big. I mean, there was parties and this and that. But you don't see your, African-American people, whatever. So going to Iowa, into Iowa City, was kind of an eye-opening experience, not only with the university, but the university hospitals there. It's just huge. It's big.
Yeah, I can only imagine coming from a place of 850 people in Iowa. I'm sure that was a very protected society of not seeing the world. So you get onto the campus of Iowa. I mean, I played high school, sports, and I would have loved to have been a D1 athlete, but I can't imagine, being the age you are in that environment. This is a new experience for you because it's a whole new world. And walk me through what it feels like to be a D1 athlete in Iowa and being able to run on the field to a packed stadium.
The memory will never go away, and like I talked earlier with you, even today when I go to Kinnick Stadium, I still get goosebumps watching the Swarm come out to the song Black and Black by AC/DC. I mean, the whole crowd erupts. It's just unbelievable. I mean, we can remember movies like Rudy when he ran through,
mm-hmm.
came out the tunnel at Notre Dame, and I've never been to South Bend, so that is a bucket list thing. But coming out of Kinnick or running out onto the Horseshoe in Columbus, Ohio at Ohio State, or being at Happy Valley at Penn State.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's just some great stadium experiences, and to be an athlete in a football, it's just got to be exhilarating.
Yeah, it's absolutely electrifying. Your adrenaline is beyond. I mean, you're ready to run through a wall. I mean, it's awesome. It's an experience
Mark, do you still keep in touch with the guys that were on your team, or how does that work when you're on D1?
Yeah, I do. So the weekend of the Penn State Iowa game, my brother and I and my nephew went, and we met up with some buddies that I played with, and then we could have came back the following week when they played Purdue for homecoming, but we didn't. But we all usually try to get together, once a year, whoever can make it. And now on the other hand, at my high school, we just had our 30th football reunion because we were runner-ups in state. We didn't win. We made it to the championship, but we got beat. But a lot of those guys live locally. A couple buddies of mine have got inducted into our high school Hall of Fame. So I've been back for that. But I only live 30 miles from Rock Rapids, so I go back a lot to my home roots. We actually went and watched them play this past Friday night in the playoffs. They got beat. So,
So you're still plugged in there.
What's that?
I said you're still plugged into the whole high school environment.
Yeah. And I don't know if you knew a whole lot when we were in Leavenworth together, but I basically sports and watching stuff on TV, being connected that way kind of helped my time go by.
Sure.
It helps.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's any doubt. Football Saturdays and Sundays at Leavenworth was something you plugged into because it felt like you could get it. It was an escape, really.
Yeah.
Let your mind escape.
And if the Chiefs are playing, you could hear a pin drop in the cafeteria. Nobody talked.
That's true. Well, okay. So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's walk through some, you get to college, you play Iowa, you get to walk around like a rock star, basically. You graduate. Then tell me a little bit about your business life. Where did you go into?
I, at that time, worked in, finance stuff, did some credit card stuff at Citibank, First Premier Bank card, and then did some stuff with Million Automotive in their finance department, and just kind of got bored with those three jobs and then I went into the banking industry and did that and stayed there through quite a while, like 20 years I suppose. Did that and then was approached by a few friends of mine that were into some illegal things and wanted me to help them hide their money. And they were going to pay me X amount of dollars. And I was still out drinking and partying, using drugs myself. So I knew, that would be an opportunity. And nobody ever wants to turn down money. Mm-hmm. So that's what I did. I started helping them, and then I actually started dealing myself. I think about the end of 2009, and this is bizarre how this goes down. I was using banks in different 3 states, so that made it federal because I was in South Dakota. I was using a bank in Iowa, Nebraska, and Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So anytime you go across state lines, it's federal because you're breaking the FDIC code of banking, whatever. Mm-hmm. So 2009. I think it was in spring of that. Matt Miller, the FBI agent, calls my mom. Now, I don't know if that's a thing that they know, that you'll return a phone call if your mom's calling that she wants, and she tells me that this FBI guy called. And I don't know when he's going to show up, but he wants to talk to you. So I knew then and there I was done. And I didn't hide it, and it took about 2 months, and he shows up at the door, and my brother answers the door.
Who looks like
you. Yeah, and he's got a picture.
Mm-hmm.
So my brother lets him in, and he's like, well, do you have any other identification, this and that, whatever. So my brother yells at me because I'm down in the shower, and this Matt Miller's here, and he goes, we need to have a little visit about a few different things. And I said, well, what do you want to know? And whatever I knew I was done with. And that's how the whole journey of going to Leavenworth, Kansas all began, Brett.
So walk me back a little bit, Mark. The guys that came to you, were they friends of yours? Did you feel obligated to get in bed with them and help them out?
Well, the money aspects of it, I knew of them through friends. I mean, I was not by any means. I'd see them once or twice a month and have drinks with them or something. And I knew what they were doing. Because one individual.
Just out of curiosity, how did you know how to do what they wanted you to do?
I knew that if I didn't know, I knew other people that could.
Okay.
So regardless, what they wanted or whatever, I knew I was going to get that task done for them, and I did. And I just used small banks that back then, the 9/11 issues with security, with banking, within the states and internationally was not, you could stay under the radar and not get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But then they started asking questions about my money and these other accounts because my name was on them, and they wanted to know what I was doing to make that money.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's how it all started.
So it was in a sense, it was drug related, and you were more or less creating accounts to launder that money to make it. Okay. I got it. And then towards the end, and this is where my mom and dad get upset and mad and whatever, and they've forgiven me, but I used my dad's, I knew my dad had a private savings account, and he hardly ever checked it. So I knew with that aspect, I could hide money there. And then I also knew that I could get another credit card on either one of their credit cards. So I did. So, yeah, because I was planning on running if it got too bad, and I never let or never got the chance to run. And I'm glad I never did to this day, that I never, because that could have been a whole another ball game in hand. So when he comes and knocks on the door, you said you knew the gig was up. What time spans happened from him meeting you at your door to you deciding you're going to do a plea? And what was your plea bargain?
They dropped it to one count or whatever, but they could. I was looking at anywhere from 15 years, the max, to a year and a day. The year and a day to 15 years is what the whole guidelines were. And then I ended up getting 24 months.
You ended up getting 24 months.
Yep.
Okay. So
that would put me at Leavenworth for 3.5 years then, correct?
Yeah. 24 months would be 2 years. So you probably, because you said you were at Leavenworth for 4.5 years, right?
Right. Right.
So however many months that is.
Right. Right. Well, we'll just go with that. I'm not a brainiac, but yeah.
Well, I'm certainly not any good at math. The only reason I know the 4.5 years is because I asked you before we got on.
Right. I know you did. I did.
So Mark, you plead, and you said that there was some issues with your parents. What happened? What were the how did you work that out, or did you work that out, or did it work itself out as you were going through your Leavenworth process?
It worked its way out, but at first, they thought my mom and dad were in cahoots with me and blah blah blah, and I told them no, and I said, do the investigation. These people, let alone, don't have a speeding ticket to their name. Mm-hmm. Whatever. I manipulated them, and them not even knowing. So, whatever. So, but they were pissed because, they trusted me with their life, and, my mom knew in the back of her mind, that it was drugs and alcohol, or mainly drugs involved, and she knew I was using. So, yeah, I mean, after she knew that, and being away, everything kind of worked its way out when I came home, because my dad and my twin brother picked me up from the bus depot, and the following weekend, my mom came up to visit. So, I made an amends with them. And before my dad passed away 4 years ago, him and I talked to my dad, and he forgave me. So
that's great.
I feel good about, I have no regrets, and I don't feel guilty.
Well, and I'm sure,
but I don't.
Well, I'm sure, Mark, too. I mean, you provided them a lot of pride and
right.
through their life and what you did, and mistakes. Mistakes happen. It's I always say, the mistake happens, and it's what do you do with that? You got to use it to try to make sure that you can get on the right track to get it right.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So when you finally pled and they told you had your sentence, did you voluntarily surrender?
I did. So I went to my initial hearing, and he gave me a PR bond. And then it was like 9 months after, because I was trying to stay out as long as I could, and I knew I needed one of my shoulders replaced because I was doctoring at that time. Mm-hmm. So I had my shoulder replaced to give me more time, which gave me probably a year and a half more. So, and I got documentation to do all that, but
I think the waiting's tough, though. I mean, I waited.
Oh, it is
November to January middle of November, the middle of January, and that seemed like a strange time, knowing that you're getting your next step is the one you don't want to take. So I can't imagine doing that for 9 months. How did you prepare?
Well, basically medicated with using a lot of drugs and drinking a lot. Mm-hmm. And just trying not to think about it. But there was a weekend that I could have gotten in trouble, and I ran away because the cops were coming, which I could have lost my PR bond, because you're not supposed to be in a bar when you're out on pretrial.
Right.
So, because I actually had a federal probation officer that I had to meet with when I was on pretrial, to let him know this and that and the other. He never came to my house, but I had to either call him, fax my pay stubs in, this and that and the other. Mm-hmm. So doing that aspect and finding out what I did, I kind of kept my nose clean and spent a lot of time at home, hanging out, whatever.
So take me to Leavenworth. You voluntarily surrender, drive up to the big ugly penitentiary where they process everybody, stand down at that gate. What's going through your mind?
What have I gotten myself into? And I just tried. I don't know. I talked to a couple guys on the bus that were also going to the camp, and they were a little bit old. I mean, there was one gentleman I think that was in his late 50s, and then I can't think of his last name was Grammer.
Oh yeah, Dave Grammer.
Yep.
Yep.
He was on that bus, and a couple other guys. Jeff Frost was on there, and then I can't remember. But anyway, because I was in the hole, I was bunkmates with Grammer in the hole before we were taken down to the camp the next day, because I was at Leavenworth and you were a part of it, I think. They had cots. So I slept on a cot up in B2 for like a month.
Yeah, it's because it was overcrowded.
Yep, just a little bit.
What? When you were getting go ahead, Mark.
I'm just going to make a joke. The cuisine and food there was second to none. I mean, I'm glad I went there because I think the food made me healthier. That's a joke, and you know that. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I was working at the food warehouse. I got to see all that food, and a lot of it was expired.
Yeah.
So there was reasons why it didn't taste good. So so you were there with getting in, and you stayed a night in the hole. Why did they keep you for a night in the hole when you arrived? Because they were overcrowded.
Because they were waiting. There were people in our cots, and they were getting out the next day, or I don't know the whole story. But this was August. Yeah. So it was nice and cool in Leavenworth, Kansas in August.
Being very sarcastic, because in August in Leavenworth, we also didn't have air conditioning, so you got to feel the weather in and out.
Yeah, and me being a husky gentleman, Brent, I tend to sweat. Well, when you're laying in your cot sweating profusely, it's not a good issue.
So, your first day, your first experience, what's going through your mind? How are you getting set up? Are you running into people? Are you asking questions? You haven't been here before, so what's Mark Ross doing?
There were a few guys up in B2 that kind of helped me out with different things. Of course, I went to the chapel that evening to get my toiletries, because I really wanted to shower. And I had another gentleman give me a pair of tennis shoes because those boots just aren't going to work.
That's a common theme.
And I got a pair. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing, Mark, I wanted to go back and just so for the listeners, there is something unique, and I don't know if it happens at all the prisons, but when you're a new prisoner, you don't have toiletries. They don't give you toiletries. You don't have any. And what they do is the prisoners basically pool together toiletries to give to new prisoners. And then you go down to the chapel at 9:00 that night, and they give you the toiletries, the toothbrush, the toothpaste, soap, shampoo, those type of things, just to get yourself set up, which means a lot at that time because you don't have that. And like you said, somebody giving you tennis shoes is a huge gift, because walking in those boots, they don't bend. they're like walking in bricks. You can't really tell from the outside how bad they are. I've seen pictures, they're like, well, I don't think those boots look that bad. Well, they don't look that bad from a picture, but man, are they bad.
Yeah, they look fabulous in a locker, and that's where they need to stay.
Exactly. So, Mark, how do you your environment in this unfamiliar world, do you have a strategy of how you're going to take on this new world? What's going on in your head about what are you going to do? You've lived a different life, and you've been a D1 athlete, you've been a rock star, and you've had you've made money out there in the world, and now you're in a cot with probably not even a locker. You've got a box, and you've just been given some toiletries. How are you handling things, and what are you doing?
Basically, I read a lot of books. I walked outside because they don't let you go look for a job or you can go look for a job, but they don't give you a job until after orientation.
Right.
So I sat around and drank a lot of coffee in the morning, and after the second day, made sure that I hid from Swanson, because if he's seen you doing nothing, he was putting you to work.
Right.
So, and everybody told me to be well aware of Mr. Swanson.
And
so
that there were two counselors in this world that we lived in. There was Swanson, who was the terrible bad cop who was just demented. And then there was Goodwin, who was the good cop, who really was trying to do the right thing by the inmates and really didn't treat you like an inmate. And that was an unusual thing in the prison world.
Yeah, because I was fortunate to finish up when he came on after the retired guy. Swanson switched me over to Goodwin, which was a good thing.
It's a good thing. I had Goodwin also.
Yes.
And he always told me, Brent, remember, I am your counselor, not Swanson. Yeah. So you did end up, Mark, getting a job, because I remember I was working at the food warehouse, and you'd run up there. We'd touch base when you were on the mower. But you did something that is probably going to live in infamy for Leavenworth, and it's probably the story still being told to other new inmates. Can you tell me the story of the day that it happened?
So when I first started at landscaping, I was put on the weed eater crew and drove the tractor. So this afternoon, we were going up to take care of everything up at the Warden's Hill, which is the highest point looking over Leavenworth, and probably, depending upon the weather, you could probably see 10 miles on both sides.
A very unusual thing in Kansas.
Yes. So we are, I've been driving, and it was a hot day, and I had been driving that tractor pretty hard. Needless to say, it was probably a 1960-something Ford tractor. So, the equipment wasn't up to par.
Right.
And with inmates repairing it, it was just like a Band-Aid. So whatever. So anyway.
And you're pulling a wagon of inmates.
Yep. A flatbed with wagon on it. And there's probably 7 inmates with their weed eaters. And we're coming down the hill, and I'm picking up speed. I'm trying to drop a gear, and it won't. There's no brakes, and the clutch is gone. So I yell back and tell the guys, hang on, because this isn't going to end good. So I'm proceeding down the hill, and there's a cables with wooden pillars that this cable goes through, and I am thinking fast that I need to hit that cable somehow to slow me down enough and hang on. And I was turning, and I rolled the tractor to its side, and the guys in the back went flying, and the flatbed rolled over as well.
Which you were lucky you didn't get killed with the tractor rolling off on a speed.
I pinned to my leg somehow up in the housing area where the brake and the clutch were, and I gashed my forehead fractured my skull and bruised some ribs. And yeah,
So
when I woke up, I just made sure that I could see and I could move, some things, whatever, but I knew my head hurt. So I knew I was alive. So
it was definitely the talk of the prison that this had happened. And walk me through what happened after this.
So I, obviously took an ambulance ride and didn't even stay overnight. They brought me back later that afternoon, and I got a shot for driving carelessly or something with endangerment. I don't know. But my boss at landscaping got it thrown away.
And a shot.
That was all Swanson.
Mark, a shot.
Swanson's doing.
Yeah. I just want everybody to follow along with our prison lingo.
It's a disciplinary write-up.
Right.
But we called shots.
And they were shots, and if you got, and they were levels. There were levels of shots. So if you got a first level shot, you could spend more time in prison, and it can add to your sentence. Some other shots can put you in the hole for a few days, or some people for 30 days, and they come back looking different. So you come back. I remember you coming back. I mean, you were bruised up, and you looked like you'd been in a bad car accident. You'd actually been in a bad tractor accident. Amazingly enough, I can't believe that the guys that got thrown didn't end up any worse than what it was. It was like they got thrown and
just scraped up, and that was about it because they checked them all out.
Yeah.
So, and I was fortunate. I mean, that none of them could have got, they could have been easily hurt worse than they were, or even killed.
Yeah. No, it was as bad as it was, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And
right.
There's really no way to explain the size of this hill, because it's a large hill to where the driveway has to zigzag to go up to the warden's house. Yeah. There's no way to get it the other way. So Mark,
it winds around, I think, twice.
Mark, you get, what are the different places that you lived in the prison, as you were getting closer to the door? What was going through your mind about getting back out?
Just that, people knowing what I did, and explaining to them, because I was going to the halfway house in Sioux Falls. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know at the time, have a clue what I was going to do. I mean, I really didn't want to humble myself and go work at McDonald's or fast food. Mm-hmm. And I knew I couldn't do anything to be around either cash or credit cards,
right? Because
that was the stipulation of probation. So I really didn't have, I prayed about it. But I don't know, I just, being locked up and being there that long, having that much time to think about things, mm-hmm. I knew that it would figure out itself and I'd be okay. I mean, I'd come this far, rolled the tractor. I'm in Leavenworth, Kansas. What more else could happen as worse as what's going on now?
Yeah.
So I knew, and my twin brother had a lot of contacts, so just talking, and then, I don't know, I was, and this, but if you have people, I'm going to back up a little bit. So during prison, Brent, I don't know if you knew or realized, or it came, or I mentioned it to you, I never had any visits. So, when I was waiting to go to Leavenworth back then, and what I'm talking about is my family, mm-hmm. how my mom and dad are going to react. Mm-hmm. Cause I got a letter from my mom, and what we talked about earlier, she never says the F word. Well, I got a 2-word letter, F off, from my mom.
Wow.
On my 40th birthday. So I knew I had a lot of time to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So that was on the back of my mind. But I had talked to my mom a month prior. I don't know, something. I had money. I had money on my phone. So I called her or called them, or I don't know when it was, but I talked to her, and, you know, she told me she loved me, and so did my dad. And I knew that I was going to not only have work ahead of me on probation, but also trying to heal
mm-hmm.
with my family. You know, my twin brother and I were okay. we're okay. And my younger sister, I knew my younger brother was going to be a hard one because he was remarried, and I didn't know his new wife. So I knew, you know, I had some things there, but that I needed to work on. But not only other than that, I had 4 at the time nephews. Now I have 5. But getting to know them as well was going to be, you know, and just,
I would think that would have had to meant the world to you, though, getting that phone call and them telling you that they loved you after you had been sitting with that for a while. That had to fill you up to know, hey, I've got steps to take, but this is gonna work for me.
Yeah. Right. Well, and you know that as well as I do, is, you know, like I said prior in the podcast, you know, I don't blame my mom and dad for anything growing up, or the ethics and the morals and the respect and breaking the law. That they taught me everything. It was all me, not them. Mm-hmm. I mean, I listen to some speakers once in a while, and preferably some Alcoholics Anonymous. They'll blame their mom and dad. And that's, to me, that's the biggest turnoff, because you and I know they didn't force you to do anything. You made the choice.
There's a choice.
So,
right.
You know, I look at that as well, you know, and you know, I'm not, you know, I know the difference between right and wrong, and I know that you did, and other guys that have been on this podcast too. But I mean, I don't care what anybody says. Nobody forced you to do whatever. You made the choice. And like I talked to you about Jason too, prior to that, with what he said, you think you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and you have that macho, I'm a badass, come and get me type of deal. And then I had that mentality 100%.
Yeah. And that's usually when things happen that are, you know, that you feel like you can't make a mistake. And if you do, you can cover the mistake, and you've got a lot of confidence, and sometimes confidence and arrogance can be.
I look at it. Right. But you look at it too, Brent, of growing up and being on top of the world. Things are great. And then it takes you know, that's the whole, you know, that's when it comes down to, you're stuck in that lifestyle and you don't ever want to get out of it.
It's like Corbin said the other day. He was on the podcast and he was talking about that there were just little choices, a little choice, a little choice, a little choice. And then all of a sudden he was on that path, and the other part of the good path wasn't as recognizable because he'd gotten step by step into the wrong path. So, Mark, you get out, you get back home. What was all that like, getting back into your world and your society, your friends, your people you know?
Well, right. So I'm at the Glory House, which is the halfway house for federal guys on probation getting out of prison. So that's where I went, and didn't do a whole lot the first week, whatever, because the only thing you could go to was AA, and you had to go to 4 a week. I don't know, whatever part of programming. But anyway, and what I'm about ready to tell you guys about when I was in Sioux Falls is, I go to church regularly, but what happened when I went to church that Sunday, and this is bizarre, this guy used to be in the inner circle that I used to party with and went to work for the 3 other guys. Well, he is now a pastor at this church that I'm going to, and I see this guy.
Wow.
And his name's Pastor Monty Gannon. He's moved on from Sioux Falls and now is in Omaha, Nebraska as a pastor. Started a church there in one of the suburbs, Bellevue, I think, or Papillion. Well, anyway, small story short. So I see this guy and I'm like, why is he here? Because I'm like, I can't even go to church and I'm home a week and I'm seeing somebody from my past. So whatever, church goes on and this guy gets up and speaks. Well, so then after church, he comes and he goes, I hear, hey, Mark. Well, I'm thinking, this is the guy that's preaching that just got done, Pastor Monty. It's somebody else, and I'm just ignoring because I'm thinking, well, they probably know my brother, whatever. Because that does not happen all the time. Go somewhere, somebody starts talking to you, you just let them go. Yeah. Whatever. So anyway, he goes, well, I'm Pastor Monty. I'm the pastor here at Celebrate Meadows here in Sioux Falls. He goes, what have you been up to? I said, are you kidding me right now? He goes, what about? I go, so you don't know where I've been? He goes, no, I heard you left for a while, blah, 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 whatever. I'm blown away that he doesn't know, but that I went to federal prison. But anyway, this main campus, they had 2 churches, one on the east and one on the west. Well, the west side was where all the church offices were, this and that and the other. He goes, what are you doing for work? I said, nothing. He goes, tomorrow morning, I'll call the Glory House for you, and here's some money for bus passes. You can start coming to our church and doing computer work, whatever, this, that, and the other. I can get you out of there 5 days a week. How's that sound? And I'm like, okay. So it was kind of bizarre what happened. And, and then after there, I went and worked for another buddy of mine that sold fitness equipment, home gyms, treadmills, did commercial fitness equipment. So I helped deliver equipment with his son. So, yeah.
That is very
and then I had to have
all that happened. That's really something.
And then, right. And then with the tractor accident, there was a lot of other things. So before I came to Leavenworth, I already had artificial knees, and I knew I re-injured my knee at Leavenworth during that accident, and I knew I re-injured my shoulder. So I left. I had to have my shoulder done, and then I had to wait 6 months, and then they did my knee. So right before Thanksgiving, now I got out in September from Leavenworth, and I was home the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So yeah. Wow. And I actually came back. I came back to my mom, and I moved in with my mom and dad. Yes.
And things seemed like they were starting to heal with mom and dad. Yep. Yeah. That's great. Yep. Tell me a little bit, Mark, about, you were talking about to me earlier that you've been places to speak to kids. Can you talk about that?
I've spoke to several FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes groups here in Canton and Sioux Falls. Youth groups around. I used to go to the treatment center where my mom worked and spoke.
What's your message, Mark? What's the message that you're giving them?
Just basically like what you and I talked about a few minutes ago about making the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have nobody to blame but yourself because you decided to go down that path, and you should have took a right, and you took a left.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk to youth, it's about just taking life for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what you hear from other athletes that are playing professionally other than myself, may it be male or female, or, we all make mistakes,
mm-hmm.
And I try to tell them that I never used any illegal drugs as in steroids or anything like that. I did lift a lot, but I try to get a good plug in for the state of Iowa and tell them I'm farm strong.
Mm-hmm.
So since Iowa's all about America needs farmers.
That's right.
So, and it's just, nobody can do it for yourself because kids today doing athlete, playing sports and being an athlete, it's 110%. And I'll back up. I still umpire girls softball over in Iowa with my twin brother. And if you would come to a game, any one of you listening or you, Brent, you would be amazed of what the shit we hear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's bad. I've never tossed anybody. My twin brother has a couple times. He actually threw a fan out, and it come to turn out it was the head coach's husband of the team that they were umpiring. Yeah. Well, so,
Mark,
but what?
I was wanting to know, like when you go and talk to those kids, and you lived that life of an athlete that you got to play the sport that you wanted to play at the place you wanted to play it. And I think that message would mean a lot coming from somebody like you. Does it fill you up? Does it make you feel like you're making a difference when you go and do that?
I do believe that I, somewhat make a difference. And I try to tell them the whole point of, I never made it to the big time, but I did make it to the big time of knowing that it's all on you. I mean, you can't depend upon your mom and dad, and there are a few. I mean, there is a lot of kids out there today that don't have and don't want to put in the dedication because they'd rather be on their phone or, I mean, my nephew, my twin brother's son he's always on a Snapchat or, and what's bizarre, he's friends with all his buddies and guys and girls. They don't even have their phone numbers. They communicate on Snapchat.
Mm-hmm.
So,
different world.
It is a different world. So, I know that, I coached for a few years with a buddy of mine, and even the coaches that I had, the coaches now are way different because you can't be old school and just rip them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't yell.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, the only disciplinary that they can still do is make them run.
Yeah.
So, but, and it all comes down to, hanging out with the right people. And I try to tell them when I'm talking that, my story might be similar to people that you've listened to, but I'm hoping that you'll get one key thing out of me visiting with you guys. And then what I also like to do with them is break it down into small groups.
Mm-hmm.
So then they can know, this one gentleman was freaked out because he asked me all about Leavenworth, Kansas,
mm-hmm.
but he didn't realize that I was in a camp and not in,
mm-hmm.
Because he said he was on. His family went to Worlds of Fun or something in Kansas City, and they drove by the prisons because of the history.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, Mark, being out and getting back adjusted to life, what do you think you appreciate about being out of prison and being free?
Well, and I don't know if you do, but there are times that during the week that, and it was bad when I was out, and you asked me to reflect on this question, and you said you did as well, of being somewhere at 4 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it took, I'm being straight and honest, it took me a year to get over that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's real. And yeah, when you asked me if I had any trauma or, PSD or whatever, I did it first because there were a few times, and I don't know if you were ever a part of that or ever had to go to the cafeteria and make lunches for the prison up top. Did you ever?
The bag nasties?
Okay, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll never forget going up there in the food trucks. I rode along. I don't know who it was, who all went, but we walked inside and there was still blood splattered all over yet from the stabbings or whatever.
Well, what happened? Just to explain that real quick, when there was something bad that happened up top, they would all be locked down, and so the people in the camp had to make these lunch and put them in these bags, and then those were delivered up to the top, and it was nasty, but that's what they were eating, and that's what they got for their lockdown.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you were lucky enough, one of your buddies took a loaf of bread and walked out of the cafeteria with it and made peanut butter sandwiches for a stamp at night, right?
Exactly. Everybody, a stamp could get you a sandwich.
Yeah. You can, postage stamps will get you anything in prison.
If you got enough stamps.
Yep.
So, Mark, wrapping up here, do you have anything you'd like? Well, first of all, is there anything I didn't ask you that you want to part with the listeners here about whatever you think as Mark Ross?
The whole stigma of people that go to prison, people think you did something far worse, whatever, this and that and the other. And the truth be told, and I don't know how you feel about this, but there is probably about 10 guys, including yourself, Brent, and Jimmy Strobe, and a few other guys, Troy Poston, Bradford. I communicate with them on Messenger, and I talk to Strobe occasionally on the phone, and have gone down to Kansas City and hung out with them. Not every person in prison's a bad guy. We're all pretty decent dudes trying to do our time, and I'm a pretty easygoing guy until somebody really does something. But I'm a talkative, open guy. So there are a lot of good people that were at Leavenworth that I can honestly say I'd still call friends today. And we're not all that bad of people. We just made bad choices.
I second that and agree with that. And, the stigma, you get the tattoo basically on your forehead that you're an ex-felon or an ex-inmate. And you have to live through that, step through that. And especially when you come home, you have to know that that's going to make it's harder because getting a job or trying to find your way, that ex-felon thing has, it's hard to wash it off your skin. But I do think that there are a lot of decent guys that, end up on the wrong path. But, and that's one thing I like about being able to have these stories to share on the podcast is that more of it is, and the reason why it's called Nightmare Success is to get to where you want to go, you have to cross through a lot and your nightmares and your fears to get where you want to be. And I feel like, Mark, you're in a good place. You've hit things head on, walked through it. You knew you needed to heal things with your parents. You walked right back into the place where you grew up. You're giving back. You're talking to people. You're talking to youth, and you're using it. And I think, out of anything that we can take from our experiences, if we can actually take it and use it, and it could benefit anybody, that makes us feel good.
Yep, I agree.
Mark, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate having you as a guest. Thanks for taking the time.
Complete honor, Brent. And it's great to see that you're doing as well as you are, and doing this podcast I think is absolutely phenomenal that we can get our stories out there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Mark. And for all of you who listen, I so appreciate the likes and the follows, subscription. So everybody, Nightmare Success, in and out. Thanks for being here today.